and right there, the biggest reason why culture is so important. I mean, if you want to retain good people in whatever it is that you're doing, you've got to have the culture that is going to keep people wanting to stick around, because this is
Totally.
a time of change. Everybody's constantly on the go and changing, and in real estate, people are constantly changing brokerages. And I try to explain, look, the grass isn't always greener,
Yeah.
and if you're not watering your own grass, don't go on the other side of the fence because you think it's greener, and that grass is just going to end up dying too if you're not watering it. So
Exactly.
so yeah, so culture is something, and we'll dive a little bit more into culture here in just a little bit. But how can real estate agents, and even maybe smaller brokerages, how can they adopt like a rock star mindset like that, right? To where they can improve team cohesion and performance, because I think that would be a great starting point for people when they're looking to increase performance. Just think about what you're doing and the environment that you're creating.
Yeah, and I love that question. Have this rock star mindset. I use a lot of that language, obviously, in everything I do. I mean, probably when I left Hard Rock and went out on my own, I do pull the levers of trying to find the balance between that education and entertainment. So I like the words, edutainment. That's sort of the mashup that I use. But so Rockstar analogy is a perfect example. So thanks for the question. I do believe that there's something cool about a band and a brand analogy. So I think when you think about teams in general, if you just take a rock and roll band or whatever genre that you like, these guys and girls have to be on the same page. They got to be singing off the same sheet of music. If you have one or two people that are off doing their own thing, there's no doubt whether it's going to be super quick and implode after one song, or they're one hit Johnny or one album and that's it, or it's death by a thousand cuts. It just takes forever, but eventually they're going to implode. So I think, with a team, it's even more so, because there's not really, you do an album or you do a tour and then you walk away for months or maybe a year. With a team, you're always there. So you really have to be on the same sheet of music. Now, I use that language because that could mean a lot of things, but let's say if there is no identified service philosophy, there's no name for it, there's no, here's what performance looks like. You don't talk about it, for instance, in the job description or on day one orientation, or maybe that's the only time you talk about it. It's not measured in your performance appraisals. You don't have a mission and values in place. There is no value orientation for me to sort of galvanize the whole team. It's everybody for themselves. And believe me, I've spent enough time with real estate agents that I think the really good ones, they probably don't feel like they need a lot of that stuff, and they're going to go off and do their own thing. But the ones that probably do need the development, do need the education, the future of that group, that association, that brand has got to have some leadership, some mentorship, something to sort of keep them there, versus I'm just going to look for where I can make a little bit more money, a little bit more sales with a different real estate industry company, whoever that is. So, and again, I know we're talking about real estate, but I would say anything. So my first thought is you've got to have everybody singing off the same sheet of music. That's my biggest thing. I also think that, and I was alluding to it, you've got to have everybody around a like-minded mindset when it comes to goals, mission, vision, values, performance appraisals, the job description. What's our service mentality? Are those clearly written? Are they where everybody can get a hold of that? And then I think this mindset of having a regular conversation with the team to say, how can we write ourselves into the story? How can we write ourselves into the client, the customer story? Meaning at the very end, when they're taking a picture of the new house keys and they're in front and they got the for sale sign, is the real estate agent actually in the picture? Are they sort of considered family because of the process, whether it was very quick or it took a while for somebody to make that decision, but they're probably buying the biggest ticket item of their entire lives. And it's almost like being on vacation and taking a picture of, the tour guide, or in my case, the bartender or the server, because of how they made me feel. I consider them family. I can throw my arm around them. So if the team has that mentality, that's the ultimate goal. I think it helps curtail them. It helps carve out the currents and the eddies to get them where they want to be, again, versus this thing feeling very transactional. I have product, product, you have money, we're going to exchange, and however I can get that done, I will. I think if you take it at a different approach, the band mentality, the rock star mentality is, how can I create something so awesome you will never forget me? It's going to be so indelible, just seared into people's forehead to say, I'm going to never forget that moment. Like being at your first rock concert. We all remember that. If everybody that's watching right now or listening, everybody remembers their first concert. You know where you were, you know who you were hanging out with at that time, who you were making out with at the time. That moment will forever be sealed into your head. So I think if you have the right mentality, you can do that even when you're getting somebody to purchase the biggest ticket item they're ever going to buy. So, again, a lot of this might be positive. It might be a mentality approach, but I think that's a great place to start, and you can manifest it. You can, this positive rock star mentality to exist into something that would be tangible, that people can go, I want more of that. The next time I got to buy a house, I'm coming back to the well on that person or that company.
Absolutely. Yeah. You touched upon so many important points there. And I'm like, I'm writing it down. I'm like, wow, man, if we start diving into these points, I mean, we're going to be here for hours because there's just so much good stuff. But I like the idea of being on the same sheet of music, right? Because we can probably 99% of us can relate to things that are musically inclined or musically related, right? Because we grew up, a lot of what we've learned is through singing. I know a lot of international people, they've learned English by singing songs that were done in English, didn't speak English. And so music just kind of connects people. And so comparing it that way and just thinking about, what people do to be remembered, the branding. I mean, you've got to have really good branding in this business. Like, who are you? Yes, you got your brokerage branding, but who are you in your individual branding? That's so important. That should be in addition to what your brokerage has. And it should kind of coincide and support each other. But you've got to have your own identity.
I think so. Yeah. And real quick on that, it's interesting because I would wonder, as part of your academy, as part of what you teach, I've been around some real estate brokerages where they want everybody to represent the brand, of course. And then I'll go somewhere else and people talk about personal branding. Because I think the fear obviously is, if you're really good and you wind up leaving the brokerage, you leave the brand, then are you taking all of that potential clients and future clients? Are they going to hunt you down versus coming back to insert brokerage name here? I don't think people think as much like that. I do think they do have this great experience with the individual, probably the point person more than anybody else. So the goal as a brokerage then is, what can I do to get that real estate agent to fall madly in love with the brand? This gets back to your point about creating a culture and leadership so that person never leaves. And so it's a moot point. But if you're crappy at getting people to stay with you, well, then, whose fault is that? If I was a customer and 6 years later, I'm looking for a new house, of course I want to have the same experience with the person, not because of whatever transactional incentives that you were giving me to stay with that neighborhood or whatever it is. So great point. But it's funny because I do see people have different opinions about that.